So, while we are writing a programming, we're going to use the keywords. So these keywords are the what we can say the reserved words that we are going to use in Apex programming, and it's having its own significance. And these keywords cannot be used as a literals. Okay, what are the literals? Literals are what we are going to use as a names. Let's say if I take some sample program. I think yesterday we had written some classes as well. Public with sharing class. Let's say student info. And then use sorry, use public and use a string. I use say student name. So this is an example. So here, what is a literal means? Literal is nothing but a student name. Here, the public is again a keyword. So these are like the keywords that we use: private, public, global. These are also a keywords. Uh, Even though they are access modifiers, those are also keywords reserved for a Apex programming. So we cannot use this keywords, like not only this, there are so many, so we cannot use all these keywords as part of literals. So literals are when we are declaring a variables, let's say string, a variable, a class, sorry, when we declaring the object, a class as a data type, and we declare the object as a variable. So all the variables names that what we're giving, we call them as a literals. So they have some restrictions while naming literals. Those are like we cannot use any of the reserved words called keywords. We cannot use as a names. That is, let's say if you want to use some variable as a public is not allowed, or like if you use a static is not allowed, final, this, super, return, anything if you use a keywords as a literal names is not going to not allowed in a programming. And while you are naming, and what we call them as identifiers. So student name is going to be a identifier. What the name that we're going to give, it's called a identifier for that variable. And what we call in common all these names is called a literals. So the restrictions, so what we have, we cannot use a keywords as your literal names. And then you cannot start a literal name with a number or any special characters. That is, if you're going to start variable with 78, it's not going to be allowed. Even if it is, let's say, 7 hills, it's not going to be allowed. It has to start with an alphabet, and then followed by you can add the numbers. And you cannot use a special characters like these. So we can use something like underscores, we can use dash, we can use, but other characters which are all used like some functions or special characters, where those are not allowed in the naming of your literals. And there is some points I want to cover as part of literals and identifiers. And let's see some examples over here. So I have already having some class over here. I'm trying to start with the one. and trying to save here whether it will allow me or not. Let's see. So it's not allowing me. So if I give one underscore, so here whether it's allowing or not, where you can see here we have the bottom, we have a tab called a problem section where it will be mentioning what is error that you're getting over here. Okay, so if I use a number at the end and trying to save, it will allow me. And anywhere in the middle also, you can use whatever. Okay, this is like the different error. So what I'll do here, I'll create one more variable so that it's not a mess. So if I give a number here also, it will be allowed. If I give a underscore, it will allow. And if I'm trying to use any kind of special character, it will not allow. And if I'm trying to use some keywords like public as my literal name, also not allowed. And one more foremost important thing was the Apex programming language is a case insensitive. It does not um, mean like if you have declared a variable like a student name, it doesn't mean like you have to use exactly same. If I give like a student small n or like capital S, capital U, it doesn't matter for it. It will accept everything. It is not a case sensitive. It is a case insensitive programming. Even though the public also you can give it like anything, but you have to follow the naming convention so that it will help in your reading of a code. Like once you have developed and after some time, if you come back and see the code, it will be easy for you to understand. But as a programming, it's not a restriction. That is a convention. You can follow it or not follow it, doesn't matter. For compiling a code, for compiling code, it is a case insensitive, so you can use anyway. Doesn't matter for it. And you cannot declare a duplicate names also. Like say you have a student name, and if you're trying to give like another name with different case, it is not going to be allowed. Why? Because both are treated as a same name, right? It's a case insensitive, so everything will be treated as a same name. So it will not allow a duplicate variable names. Is not allowed. Okay, so that is on this part. And now coming to the keywords, static keyword. So while so far we have not used a static keyword, and all the variables that you're using as part of a class, we can access those variables only by creating as objects. Well, sorry, by creating the objects of the class. So let's say if you want to use the student name, how we're going to use? We're going to create a object for the student info, and then we'll utilize this variable as part of the copy of that this is a blueprint of a object, and in the object we will be having all the variables that we declared and the methods also we will be accessing from the object that is being created from the class. So these are like we have some examples that we did yesterday we use, but there is some property which will be dedicated for the class variables. Like we can initialize and use as part of our subjects only, right? When we use a keyword called a static, we can use the variables within the class, and those are called as a class variables and class methods that can be accessed using a only class name, not the object name. That means let me create a new class, um, new Apex class called student static info. So I will create a few examples over here. Some of them I want to make them as a non-static variables, and some of them I want to use as a static variables. So where I have to use after access modifiers, we have to use a static variable or not. Okay. I want to use a public static string student name and then roll number, age, and address. I have given. Okay, fine. Mm, Once I given, if I'm trying to sorry, create an object for this class, and if I try to access a student name, let's see whether I was able to access it or not. I'm just removing all this code. So I have a class. So how I will declare declare a class where object. So I'm just giving a s1. So here I just declare the variable of this class, but I have not initialized. So how to initialize? S1 equal to new class name is a default initializer for a class. If you have a different initialization, we have to write a constructor, then only we can initialize that. So here we're not going to cover that part. So we already done that. So here, so what is my assumption here? If I want to access, um, let's say I gave here name as a name, and if I want to give a roll number, I want to give a name. Okay, I'll save it. So here we have thing called system debug, right, where we can print the values and see what we're able to see. Okay, system debug is the thing. System debug. I want to see um, the student name, what it is, and then if I'm trying to print s1 dot student name, I was expecting I want to see the student name, and before that I want to do want to print the roll number of the student. Okay, so if I'm execute, what I'm expecting was I want to print this roll number, I want to print this name. Why? Because it's already there in the class. So because this student name is a static, it should not be allowed. Let's see what will happen. Execute highlighter. So static field cannot be referenced from a non-static context from a type student info. So how we can access them? So we cannot access from a static variables from an object of the class. Then how we can access? We can access directly using a class name. So that they can be used only once. They cannot be created as a instances. So let's see. Execute. Now they are printed. So the thing was, even you cannot access, and it is completely a wrong syntax itself. Itself, it will not be accessed from a object oriented. Those are like only a class belongings, and they can be initialized to once, and they can be used within the class, and they can be referred using the class names only. There's not only the variables, there can be a methods which are static, public static, and I don't have any return type, and I want to print student info. Here I want to some debug. Here I want to print student name, and similarly I want to print everything. I want to print roll number, age, and address. So I was trying, so I will give some information here as well so that I can see some values there. Okay, that, this one. So this is a, what it is, this is a static method. Okay, the static methods can only access static variables of the class, not the other variables. It cannot access. That's why you see the errors called you cannot access this variables or does not exist itself. So let's say I'm going to write a one more method which is a non-static method. That means I will not use a static keyword here. Just I will mention it as this is a static method, is a non-static method. So what happens? So this is saying like these are not allowed, right? So I'm not using the, sorry, I'm just commenting those. Fine. So the static methods can only access the static variables, but a normal method can access the static variable and the normal, I mean, the non-static variables also can be accessed, but you will see the difference once we call the method. Okay, so I'm going to have a constructor. Okay, or like let's say unit or constructor also we can use it. So I would created a one object for this class, right? S1. So now I have given, I want to change the values as part of this one. So I have a roll number. I want to use some roll number over here, and then I want to use for age. I want to use for address. Address. Can I? And age. I have nine. Okay. Now, if I'm trying to, so here anyway I cannot access the student name. Why? Because it's a static variable. If I try to use it also, it is going to be a illegal usage. And then I'm going to call this method non-static method only we can call and see if I can use a static method as well. Obviously I cannot call, but let's see whether we can call it or not. So execute. So in line 7 it's saying cannot be referenced from a non-static context. Student name from type of student info. So line number 7 where we can access it, just I was removing the line and execute again. Okay, again line number 12, we're trying to call a static method from an object which cannot be possible. So again, removing that line and then execute. Okay, it is done. So we're able to see the student name is being called and where it is assigned the value over here. And in the object, we cannot change it. So this is the S1 object, right? Let's say if I have a S2 object where I can have a different values I can have. So let's create a different object called the same class S2. I'm trying to create. Maybe it might be very small for you guys. So I have S2 as a new variable. So I have so I'm going to print for this one. So I have, if you observe, so what I'm trying to do for the same class, I'm going to have a two variables. S1 is one variable, well, like a variable or an object, you can say one object. I have some values for it, and I have one static variable. So where I cannot access from this object, and then I'm trying to print the information over there. I'm just removing all this debug so that it will not confuse. And I'm going to print the value. And again, for the object 2 also, I'm going to print the information. Okay, let's execute how the debug will be. Even though all the sorry, I have not changed the information. Sorry about that. First, I will change the information over here. So I'm going to have different information so that I can see the difference and execute. So I don't have an option to change the name of the like student name, which is a static variable, which cannot be accessed from a object that I have created, but remaining all I can see, but all the student names are same, Ram and Ram. So if in case, so I can access using the class name, right? Using a class name, I can change the static variable. Let's say in the starting itself, or like somewhere, if I want to change the name to a Ram and Sam and try to execute, then what will happen? Before I creating as object itself, I changed it. So everywhere it will print as a new name what I change. If in case I'm not changing here, if I'm changing after a subject one, like here, I'm sorry, not here. After doing a subject one, I'm changing and I'm printing S2. It doesn't mean that only S1 is having RAM and S2 is having a RAM and Sam. Both S1 and S2 will have this new name after this line is being executed. Why? Because at class level it is being changed. Let's see the difference. So you might think while this time it got executed, first time it will print a RAM. Why? Because I not changed it. Second time before I'm doing it, I changed it to RAM and Sam. It doesn't mean that for S1 it is being that. So because before I'm changing this value only, I printed this value. That's why you're seeing that. If I print after this line, again if I'm trying to print this one, it will be again Ram and Sam only. Why? Because the variable what I'm storing as a static variable, it will be common across all the variables. You can see RAM, and here again the all information is the same as this object, but this name has been changed. So you can, all I'm trying to explain here was the static variables can be accessed only using a class name, and it can be access you it can be declared only once and can be having only one value, whereas while we creating object, it's showing its own versions, and you can have the information that is belongs to that object only, not related to the class. But whereas the static variables, those are declared only once, and if you change everywhere it will be changing that you are using the same class. It can be accessed only using the class names only. It will be same as a static methods also. You will use only using a class name dot function, a method name. Okay, we'll join back and continue on the remaining keywords.